Warning, the time wasted watching this video is non-refundable.
You are watching Dirty TV.
Nobody loves me, nobody cares. And when I die, there won't be nobody there. Nobody loves me, nobody cares. And when I die, I wanna die, I wanna die. Fuck the world, I will deny you. I will deny, atomize, terrorize, and mesmerize.
No, I grew up in suburban Illinois, and
When did you move to San Francisco?
I moved when I was 20 years old, 1986, and suburban Illinois was like, you know, I was a drug dealer, so I would go and buy drugs on the west side of Chicago from gangbangers, and I was too dumb to be scared. And I realized years later, looking back in it, like, Jesus Christ, man, I could have gotten killed any time. I had a shitload of cash on me. Yeah. But I walked in there like I owned the fucking place, driving my parents' Volare station wagon into Humboldt Park, parking it outside, walking outside, cracking a joke and making, you know, mocking people, being a dick, just being me. Yeah. And the only lesson that it taught me when I reflected on it later was A, you were stupid, but B, not acting scared is a big part of life. And not acting scared, eventually you're not scared anymore.
I also have the habit of like dressing like a fucking wino, so that always helped me in good stead. Like, you know, I walk around West Oakland, no one will even like look at me,
right?
Because I just look scummy. So you know, that always helps. You know, I'm dressed up today.
Yeah.
So
did you come here for music? Is that what drew you to San Francisco?
Yeah. What happened was
were you doing the Dwarves back then when you were?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a band called Suburban Nightmare, and we made our earliest recordings like '83 or so. And we played at, you know, early Chicago spots like the Cubby Bear Lounge. And
so you're close to Chicago where you grew up. You're pretty. Like,
yeah. Oh yeah. I went to punk shows in Chicago all the time. I started going when I was 14 in 1980.
Huge, like, so you were in one of the Chicago like.
Back then, it was most of Chicago was no man's land. There were only shows in like Wrigleyville and a couple near kind of Evanston North. And so there wasn't a lot. I mean, one thing about Chicago is it always had a big inferiority complex. All Chicago wanted to be was a New York dance club. They had no interest in starting a punk scene. There were more bands in shitty cities like Detroit and Milwaukee than there were in Chicago. Chicago was already charging $15 for your Black Flag show in 1980 and putting on all bands from other cities and nobody from Chicago. Like, it was. If you were into rock and roll, you grew up in Chicago thinking, I'm getting out of here. By the end of the 80s, it was cool and things started coming around and you had bands from there and shit that was going on. Mm-hmm. But at the time I was in high school, it was really like an us against them kind of thing. But I saw every great band in Chicago, and I started gigging out when I was like 16, so 1983 or so. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, after high school, I was like, fuck it, I don't want to go to college. College is for squares and bullshit. And I moved with a buddy out to Boston. First job is cleaning toilets at MIT. And I got a quick lesson in what happens, you know what I mean? Because I'm like a child of the middle class that was supposed to go to college, and I'm cleaning the toilets of these people and being told where to go and what to do. Yeah. So the next year, actually, I actually went to school, and I moved to New York and went to school there, and I had a really fun year, and I fucked a bunch of babes and got all high, but I knew I couldn't handle school. Like, school didn't work for me, you know? Yeah. So when I was 20, I convinced the band, who'd been various places and various schools, let's move to California. I wanted to go to LA, but one of the guys was going to go to college here. Yeah. So we came to San Francisco, and I was 20, and ever since then, I toured so much, I just kept my place in San Francisco, so now I got screaming rent control.
You're watching Dirty TV.
Yeah.
I came in right during the first boom, but I still got my place for, like, I got a pretty nice flat over here by the park. You know, I mean, what I pay is, like, compared to is a joke. Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing that, like, because, you know, I had some rough years. And it's the one thing that allowed me to, like, hang on here and then rebuild, is I always had that... Thank you, hippies. I had rent control.
Rent control is the greatest thing. And when people argue, it's so funny because people make this capitalist argument. You know, rent control really distorts the market and it's not fair. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, so if some rich asshole, like the rich asshole who owns my building, whose daddy gave him the building, makes an enormous profit that's way out of line with anything he's spending or any work he's doing, that's fine. That's the market. But when somebody like me, who's an artist, who's smart, takes advantage of something and rides it out for 25, 30 years, that's a distortion of the market.
Yeah.
Anytime anybody who's poor actually wins at capitalism,
Right, see,
that's a distortion. But when somebody who's rich wins at capitalism, it's a victory.
Now, most people that have rent control, they just have a job somewhere or whatever. But what's important about rent control is this like thin veneer of artists and musicians and performers, because the thing is what they never really take into consideration. Like, for example, in my case, I was able to start 2 businesses in San Francisco over the years, each of which employed, in the one case, hundreds of people. The record label, hundreds of people profited from that, and dozens of people locally profited from that. Because
I even got to sleep with some.
They made their living. You know what I'm saying?
I profited off.
And the same thing with you. Like since you've always had rent control, you've always been able to be in a band, and like by being in a band, okay,
pay people.
It generates a lot of commerce. Okay, it's like it generates show revenue. Bars make money, people spend money on merch. Like, you know, your activity as being in a band that tours constantly over the years, you've given employ to thousands of people. So what's never mixed into the formula is the fact that, like, creative entrepreneurial types, like, they have the safety net of rent control, then they're free to spend their money creating new opportunities for other people.
Right, that's
I've never seen that, like, work into the mix. They always talk about, like, oh, artists are good for society, but they never really define it in economic terms.
Right.
And at the end of the story, you know, it all boils down to economics. So, you know, me being able to have a rent control apartment throughout the years has given me the safety net where I've been able to generate probably millions of dollars of local revenue flow for people. Right. That was paid to locals, that was spent in local establishments, that was other local businesses. That money went back into the San Francisco structure, into the San Francisco tax base, the whole.
Because I think there is common ground between your average artist and free thinker and, you know, Joe the plumber.
But you do realize
those people should be on the same team.
But you do realize that the 3 of us are unique because the 3 of us came to San Francisco from the outside. Now, granted, you came when living was easy, okay? Me and Donnie showed up and it was a little bit tougher, but all 3 of us have managed to, like, not only, like, live here and survive, but actually create flourishing entities in the entertainment and creative fields. You know, so it's like I get really upset when people are always moaning about like they can't do it in like you can do it in San Francisco. You just have to work hard and be smart about it. And if you stick it out, you're actually going to improve the situation for other people that want to do it here. You know, so I always get a little cranky when people are just like throw their hands up because there's always a way. There's always a way.
I mean, I know what I'm going to write when I sit down with an instrument and just write something. Yeah. I kind of know what's going to come out. But I love writing with other people, and it's really turned out that there's all kinds of people I can write with. You know, guys from my band and just producer kind of guys and songwriter kind of guys. Yeah. And to me, that's also part of the cool thing about the Dwarves thing, because I know if I'm just taking part in like helping to write a pop song or doing something like that, that's kind of one thing. But you know when you're writing a Dwarves song, because there's a certain lyrical slant and a certain aggression that is just unmistakable. So even if you change genres, and even if you throw in a harmony, and even if it's slow or fast or whatever it is, you kind of know it's a Dwarves song because it's just got that fuck you to it. You know what I mean?